Welcome to this panel. What we're going to talk about is smart telecoms, a platform for the future. I'm really excited about the panelists that we have here. Just to shortly introduce myself, Boris Maurer, I'm partner with Accenture. If you've been in the morning session, we already met. And I'm completely excited that we have Atanas Dobrev here, the CEO of Vivacom. We have Marta, Capelo, Gaspar from ETNO here, and Jožek, and now I need to... Gruškovnjak, who is a consultant specifically in one application area of the future, and that is around IoT. We call him in, and I just learned that we also have somebody from the NRA here, and so we will also round the picture and go the round and learn about how the regulator actually looks at that. Who has been in the morning session already? So that I don't bore you. So then I will be brief, basically. So what we discussed this morning, or what I try to basically bring about, is that when we look at Europe as a whole and the digitization, it's a lead or lose game. And essentially, there are three capabilities that need to be in place for Europe to actually lead and not lose. And those three capabilities are: number one, we need to actually, if we want to, for example, if you think about smart city, we had the example of a smart city. If we have a smart city in Oxford, and we have another smart city in Barcelona, and we built a smart city in Sofia, and they are all built on different stacks. Then number one, we have the problem of the copier that needs to sell, the first copy needs to sell the whole house, because you always need to buy a full stack for a solution, which can also be, if there were a scalable platform, basically brought about by one application. But if you don't have those scalable platforms, then you're just too costly, and at one point in time, somebody would take you out. So the first thing that we actually need to succeed in Europe is scaling platform around the Internet of Everything. What is that about? It's a place that not only scales, but where people actually want to bring their most precious things, their data. So that needs to be a trusted environment. And actually, this data typically comes in different formats, so it needs to speak to each other. So it needs to solve the problem of interoperability as well. The second capability that we actually need is pervasive networks. If we think about all those great applications of the future, actually what they need is that whether it's a business or whether it's us at home or us trusting an autonomous car, there needs to be computing power, and this computing power partially sits in the cloud, but the cloud needs to be very, very close to us. Because if the cloud is not close to us and not reliable, we actually would not trust this cloud to actually support us. So we need pervasive, scalable networks that actually enable computing at the edge and basically bring those services of the network wherever we are, in which situation we are, in very, very different forms than today. And the third thing, actually, that we need to bring about is digital institutions for the future. So we enable ourselves that this all actually works. What does this mean? This means that if I basically interact with you as the regulator, you want to actually know that you are actually interacting with me. So you want to have my identity. So it's about identity. What the next thing that you want to have is that actually we can trust each other and that we actually know that we talk about the same thing. So you want to have that we have a verifiable footprint of what we're jointly creating. So we need to have secure transactability in that. And lastly, we actually need to have institutions around that actually are ready to deal at light speed with problems that arise, since when we are digitally transacting probably 1 million times an hour, we will not go to court in between. We somehow need to sort it out in another way than we did in the past. So we need to have digital institutions which are actually made for transaction in the digital age. So these are the three things that we fundamentally believe are necessary to succeed as Europe. If I think about it, to be very honest, in Europe, whom would you trust to think about creating interoperable ecosystems with different players which are trusted? Who is creating pervasive networks today and is investing there, and who is actually helping to bring about institutions and actually handling identifiable footprints all day already and is introducing trust into transaction today? I think that telcos actually need to play a major role in Europe in that. And that is what brought us also to the title, aren't they actually the platform for our digital future? What I would love to do now is invite the first panelist, Atanas Dobrev, and just ask him, Atanas, what is the CEO perspective that you have when you think about this digital future? What is your vision, and what is the role of Vivacom or telcos more broadly in that?
Thank you all for coming today. I will first try to center a bit the debate and bring it a bit down to earth. So imagine your homes. You're in your house, you're using different, what you call now, appliances, whether it's a fridge, whether it's a laptop, whether it's a TV. What is the main difference between what we have now and how we live, and let's say 200 years ago, or even 500 years ago, actually, or even Roman times, 2,000 years ago? There are two main differences. And if you think of it, you are going to find that only two inventions are responsible for most of the changes between how a Roman trader lived and how you live today in your house. And these two inventions, one is electricity and the other is communications. Just two. Let's take it a bit closer to home, which is 50 years ago. There is only one invention that is accounting for the bulk of the differences between how we live today, what we use in our daily lives, and what people 50 years ago lived. In the 60s, the 70s, there is only one, and this is communications. You can, of course, say yes, but communication is a subset of electricity, and you will be right. So let's take it 50 years in the future. Let's now provoke you a little bit. What is this that is to communications or to electricity? What communications was to electricity? What will change our lives so profoundly that there will be a visible difference if we manage to enter a 2020 home and a 2070 home? Artificial intelligence. And you can say artificial intelligence is what communication was to electricity, is what artificial intelligence is going to be to communication, or what artificial intelligence is to communications. This, I think, will have a profound impact on our lives, because this will change everything. This will change how we work. This will change what we need to learn. Imagine an average office or even an industrial space today without the communication, sensors and all the rest, and even the necessity of, instead of doing something in the factory, you need to program it on a computer. Can somebody who was an excellent engineer 60 years ago, is he capable at all of working in today's life? So whenever we set our priorities, and I think on this conference we're really to talk about what should be our priorities, what is where the future is going to be and how we're going to get there. So we need to both change our education system and priority, because the bad thing about the future, there is one nasty thing about the future and the change. It will come whether we like it or not. We have only two choices: jump on the bandwagon or be left behind. There is no other choice. We are either going to be, for example, in Bulgaria, one of the people that will change our education system, will be able to work with that, and we will be able to drive the change in the future, or we will be some backward rural community that nobody really wants to go, apart from coming and buying cheap food stuff and having cheap accommodation. That's it. There is no other way. And so I will then shift you a bit home, at least because there are a lot of things that needs to be done, but because I also have a bit narrow focus, and actually the panel has a little bit narrower focus of what needs to be done, is, as we already established, AI needs communications. You call it pervasive, you call it but let's use the most simple words, because not all of us have the nice vocabulary of Boris, and because we're not consultants, so we want it to be everywhere, and so that it works. So that whatever application we use, we need it to work. On some of the other panels, they talk 5G and so on and so forth. But let's say there is one simple way, what is needed to get to 5G. As our colleague from ETNO is probably going to verify, there is only one thing that's needed to go to 5G for Europe. That thing is called 500 billion euro. Nothing else. I think you give us 500 billion euros, we will have 5G more or less where 4G is today. We'll be there. Okay, not enough, but we will be a long way there. And so the problem with that is somebody needs to do it. Okay, somebody needs to come up with the capital and put that capital. And that somebody, either we need to be the state, which means somebody will take it from our taxes, prevent us from spending what we are going to spend it today, and put it in the future. Unfortunately, that model, at least in telecoms, was proven to be wrong. I mean, a lot of the big companies, they call us incumbents, ex-monopolies, whatever they call us. But what we are and what we were, at least at some moment of time, we were a failed experiment. The state said, I know everything. So we will have some bureaucrats who will decide what to do where. The end result was queues. You need to wait for a simple phone line for between 3 and 10 years, depending where you live. Now we have the reverse. Different telecom providers are begging you to take their services. So we have this one approach, which is we regulate everything. We tell you brief, you don't brief, you get 5G here, you don't get 5G there, you get whatever its flavors. The other way is we open it to competition. I personally from the second way. But then we come to regulation, because the problem with private enterprise is that people will put money only if some other people don't stop them. So I will come, hopefully, in 15, 20 minutes to talk again. But what I wanted to establish, my point of view, is future is exciting. Future will bring us things that we cannot imagine today. Like nobody in medieval Europe imagined a smartphone. They could not. They could not imagine that it's going to be light during the night. What about a smartphone? So in order to do that, we need to enable the industry to invest. If the industry does not invest, we're going to get behind. We get behind, the whole of Europe will get behind the other regions. So what I will talk a bit later is what are the challenges, and let's say maybe the other panelists will think, are there challenges or everything is rosy? So with that, Boris, back to you.
So thank you very much. What I have taken away is essentially what you're saying is first there was electricity, then there was communication, and now there will be AI. But to actually power AI, you need 5G networks. Nobody's going to invest in them. So is AI in the end a pipe dream, or what do we need to go to do basically to get those investments going? And we will talk about the challenges. And I'm very interested to hear Marta about that a little bit later, and then also have your reaction about that. Before we go there, Jožek, tell us a little bit what you want to do with this AI if it's around, and what different players in the ecosystem actually do to make that happen.
Thanks, Boris. I think I'll be a little bit more boring and less visionary, because I think it's nice to look at the clouds of the sky, but then figuring out how to get to them, it's kind of important. And the panel title is Smart Telecoms as the Platform. And fundamentally, yes, we need to start talking about platforms, because only platforms can provide us with the scalability that's going to be needed in the future. I mean, imagine that you would be designing an individual stack of everything from the sensor communication, from every single application. Virtually impossible, right? Now, if we look how telecoms should really play, we should look at the value chain of the IoT. And just to take IoT, I mean, we could use any other application, could be collaboration services or whatever, but let's stick with IoT. What does the value chain look like, right? First step are the sensors and the systems that are sensing or even managing and moving things. Then it's the communication. Then it's actually the data gathering, storage facilities, and then there are applications that do something useful with that, right? So let's leave sensors out at this point in time. But the first next step in value chain is communication. And we are where we are. The current technologies are helping us do things, but to really enable IoT, we would need to develop a new network capabilities, starting with 5G, develop some other short-range technologies that would be also deployed by providers. But what's really important is it's not enough that you deploy 5G in certain spots where you're going to make money. To enable IoT in its reality, it has to really have a good capillarity. Imagine you are in a self-driving car, and doop, there's no more connectivity. And what happens? Either you take over or you get off the road, right? So the first step, the systems of communications should really evolve. And for telecoms, this is basically their natural environments, right? Providing connectivity. Now, IoT strategies that I managed to see in various players' industry differ. There are certain operators that basically say, no, we're just going to provide connectivity in IoT, and that's going to be not our core play. Well, that's fine, but if you do this, you are only taking 5 to 10% of the revenue opportunity that IoT as technology provides. So telcos are actually looking at other services. If you look, for example, at AT&T and their IoT efforts with smart cities and so forth, they are playing as the integrator of the entire IoT value chain. So they fundamentally are taking the lead, partnering in creation of platforms, but fundamentally helping the end users and companies to realize the benefits of IoT. So the fundamental question for the telecoms is going to be, what is your role? Do you want to be just the comms provider, or you fundamentally want to be a provider of a platform that would enable enterprises and consumers at the end of the day, if we talk about smart home, right, to realize the benefit of IoT as the technology? Fundamental question then for service providers is, where do I find the capabilities to do it? And this really requires a fundamental shift in telecom mentality. Telecoms were historically, looking at 50, 60 years back or more, providing and selling primarily their own services, right? We were selling the voice communications, then the data connectivity, then mobile voice. Only now they fundamentally are in the position to maintain their relevance and not to be relegated down to a utility, like water, sewer, and other things, to fundamentally really start thinking about themselves as a platform and enable business to business transactions or business to consumer transactions. And this play spans across multiple services. IoT is just one of them. So yes, the core task of telecoms is going to be develop the networks that will really support this bright future, right? But then on top of that, build the platforms, build the storage, the clouds, and application platforms that enable the utilization of the services. So that's sort of my perspective where telecoms need to go.
So thank you very much, Jožek. I hear an ecosystem theme in that, what you're talking about. And the second thing that I'm hearing is AT&T. If I think about AT&T and the Indigo platform, it's an open source platform that basically applied to their own base, and their own country reaches 400 million customers. There seems to be a little bit an elephant in the room if we talk about Europe and the fragmentation that we have here and the challenges that we have here to actually bring something about where the key thing that also the whole Indigo story is built about is actually on using data from the network to provide services.
Boris, if
so
I just may insert, speaking about platforms, what's really interesting to see, it's not just IoT and Indigo platform. There is the tendency to share. If you look at the smart home space, right? Comcast is actually licensing Xfinity platform to various operators. So the trend is there. Service providers are realizing that they cannot do it alone. So we'll see more alliances. And what's funny is that it's happening in the US, right? And we yet have to see in Europe this type of collaboration, right?
That's perfect lead over, I hope, to Marta to take a little bit the European perspective from ETNO and probably also thinking about what's not yet there that needs to be in place. And also, I understand thinking about what will the user in Europe actually consume and what do we need to create so that he can basically get all the benefits out of that.
Thank you, Boris. I will give it a try. Good afternoon, all, and thank you very much to our hosts. I'm very honored to be here and ETNO being a partner of this event today. Thank you also, I would like to give a note to Boris also because he is helping our member companies also to deliver and to communicate this vision. So I would invite you to go to etno.eu and download the report that he introduced this morning. For those who don't know us, at ETNO we represent the leading telecom operators and network owners, both on mobile, on fixed, but also with mobile business. Yes, some of their incumbents, but many of these companies actually are already operating across the border. So there are also challengers in other markets, and they compete each other actually. Look at the Bulgarian market, Vivacom, Telenor, and Telekom Austria, they're all ETNO members. So it's actually a bit of a myth to say that we only represent the incumbent interests these days. Our community is much more diverse than that. So what do we do at ETNO? At ETNO, we basically work with our members, a very small team, and we work in working groups, and we try to see what are the policy implications in the business of our members. And that's why I'm the one to talk about policy. Sorry, Jožek, I'm going to be the most boring one, but I'm used to it. I'm a lawyer anyhow. So where you used to be the boring. But building a bit the bridge with the vision. So the traditional business of telecom is to connect people, and that philosophy is embedded in all our member companies across Europe and across the world, I think. So we have a very important role to play in the society. This is one of the driving technologies that change the way that we live, as you very well explained. And now this role becomes even more important because everything is getting connected. It's not only people talking to each other, it's things talk to each other, business talk to each other. So this role becomes a little bit more complicated. So this old transformation is a challenge, as we heard today, is also an opportunity, and telcos have a very important role to play. How can you do this? We have technology, we have services, we have trust and security. On the technology, you also already addressed it. We need 5G, we need the pervasive networks, things connecting and working everywhere. On the services, we need to be able to innovate in the services layer. As you well explained, we don't want to be the dumb pipes where all the other industries make business on top of. We want to be a part of the business, and we think that we actually have an added value to this business. And it's not merely just to customize the networks to the services of others, it's building those services. And we strongly believe that that's where the European industry is actually a lead. Because if we look at smart cities, also referred this morning, we have the technology, we have the capabilities, we just need to scale it up, as Boris also explained this very well. And all of this is to actually bring more choice and more choice for our customers, better services. That is always our ultimate goal. We're at ETNO, we have also been conducting some consumer services and and we concluded that the consumers really trust the service of telcos. So we actually think we can be an important vehicle here to this digital transformation. So we have this transformation, we have the challenge, we have also the opportunity, and now it comes to the boring part. We have also the need, we need to understand the potential of digitalization, and we need to understand that we are at a crossroads, that we can lead or we can lose. And we believe that for us to lead, we really need to have the policymakers and the regulators as partners here as well. They need to understand this potential of digitization, and we need to create the right environment to actually enable the development of all these innovative services, of an investment-friendly environment to actually scale up the investments. Yes, we need 5 billion. The European Commission says 500 billion. We had a previous ETNO report that said 600 billion. In any case, the Commission says that there's a gap of 155 billion. So companies are investing. We're not saying our members across Europe are actually announcing investments on networks frequently. This is not saying that if we don't have the right rules, we will not invest at all. No, but we can actually invest at a faster pace to deliver the necessary networks for the demand for all the new services. And the second point is on services. On services, we also, as we don't want to be dumb pipes, we also need to be able to compete on an equal basis with other services providers, with all the IoT companies. When we have integrated services with connectivity, we are going to apply a different legal framework. So like a normal connected car services provider, for instance, would most likely apply the Consumer Rights Directive to these services. If we actually sell that service integrated with the communication or the connectivity layer, then we have different rules because we have to apply the telecom framework. The same applies for data protection. We have a general regime, and then if we actually hire a communication service, we have data protection rules on top. I know that you elaborate on that further, but just to clarify that we are not discussing confidentiality of communications here, we are discussing the protection of metadata that would allow our companies also to be a part of data economy. So just to be short and to conclude, because the policy is the boring part, I would just say that we need regulation. Regulation is, of course, necessary. That was also said in the morning. But we need regulation and policy to be enablers of this digital transformation. So I will just stop here and
now I'm really happy. Now I'm really happy that we also have an NRA in the room. So I just will call you in. You weren't prepared for that, but now I just call you on stage and give us a little bit your perspective. If you're listening to what you're hearing, what are the thoughts that come to your mind, and what do you think where actually we already have the right framework and where we need to adapt and to change, and what your reactions are to that? If I could just call you on stage for that, that would be, it wasn't planned, but thank you for Atanas.
Thank you very much, Boris. I'm really not prepared for this discussion, but actually
we put you on the spot.
Share my personal point of view, not like a regulator, mostly like a person which is involved in telecommunication 20 years also. Actually, speaking about the regulation or the policy, it's true that without communication and connectivity, and then communications, it's not possible to have such kind of future smart everything. Because without this platform, we will only have, for example, one box of computer and so. What we will do with this computer? Nothing. Or one telephone, but without this application, what we will do with the smart home? No, it's not possible to have smart home. That's the reason that we will have to think about what we could do with the policy and regulatory mechanism to encourage the telecom operators to invest, but at the same time to have competition, because the final result should be affordable prices for the end users. That's the reason that we have some obstacles to release everything and have, how to say, free provision of services without regulation. If you going back, and we will see that 20 years ago we have a monopoly, then we have a liberalization. At the moment, we going to the oligopoly. Actually, from the end user perspectives, the user should have a choice to decide what to choose, which kind of services to use, and at what price. That's the role of policymakers and regulators to find a good balance between business interests and end users' interest.
Perhaps we get something of a debate here. Atanas, I think I hear a trade-off, a potential trade-off. Is there actually a trade-off between investment and affordability and caring for the consumer? And I do have a second question, because it came up a little bit also when Marta talked about it, and I know that you feel strong about that, and that is the other topic about privacy and security of my data. So if you can tell us a little bit your perspective around those topics.
Because there are a number of questions raised, feel free to interrupt me and kick me off the stage at any time that you get
bored.
And
perhaps there are other people also that have questions, so we can interrupt Atanas then between when he's talking too much.
But let's start with
let's
start with the affordability. Okay, let's start with the underlying policy directive in Europe, which seems to be affordability. Because I like examples. Because I'm not into legal and to policy director, so I like to try to simplify things. Because I believe that if you cannot explain something in a simple example, you probably don't understand it yourself, but your audience will never understand it in any way. So let's take, which is, we like to say telecoms is a heavily regulated industry, but actually we are not. There are industries that are much more heavily regulated. And I will take you, and because also it's a debate, utility versus dumb pipe, smart pipe, actually dumb pipe or smart telecom. Okay, let's frame the debate. Let's take the utilities that are really regulated, which are incidentally water and electricity. Take pricing however you want to take it. Take it your bill for electricity or water as a % of your disposable income. Take it as a per liter consumed. Take it per kilowatt spent. Take it any measure you want. What my simple message is, you regulate something heavily, it becomes more expensive in time. Full stop. So maybe you're going to get some short-term benefits, but actually, whether you call it a waterbed effect or whether you call it something else, fact of life is, you take the two most heavily regulated utilities, you take telecoms, we have seen telecoms decreasing, becoming more affordable. However you measure it % of GDP, you measure it per megabyte, per kilobyte, per minute, per whatever you want. It is cheaper. Regulate us, we will become one company per country, per Europe, per world. You're going to regulate the hell out of it, and every year we're going to push a 10% price increase, and you're going to get zero better service. That's a fact of it. And that's, to me, so that's why having a policy debate about affordability is the wrong way to do it. So I will, stop. But then continuing on the, to transition into the other debate, because with Marta, because none of us really counted how much you need to spend on 5G. We just cited different sources, and these sources tend to differ by 3 times Bulgaria GDP. So, small amount, who cares? But what we need to take into account is that there is a shift in the telecom regulation or telecom-related regulation in Europe at the moment. It is centered about how to invest, in what to invest, and we, in policy terms, we call it the communication code debate. But it's at the end, do we limit returns? Do we stimulate investment, or do we focus on affordability, apart from everything? And the other debate is, do we use information? And because there was also mentioned oligopolies, I think from European perspective, one needs to look at the last 10 years and say, we have tried to push affordability as a debate. As a result, our telecom industry is currently smaller than it was 10 years ago. As a result of that, there are two real, actually, monopolies in the world that are also very active in Europe. One is called Facebook, the other is called Google, which are taking most of the jobs, the money, and the spend outside Europe. So you are the enable, and that's actually the debate around both the code and the e-privacy directive. Sorry to use these words. I was trying not to use them. But that's essentially the debate. Do we want to foster innovation in Europe? And in order to foster innovation, regulation is not the way to do it. In order to foster innovation, you need to lead people to invest. And unfortunately, it's no longer the debate whether the big bad telecom is against the local cable operator. It's actually, we have a much bigger player. I already mentioned the name, so no more advertising. I'm actually careful not to mention the name of my company, but let's take, it's actually from European perspective is, do you want to enable European companies to compete with these players or not? Because if you regulate, and the debate we have as an industry with the regulators and actually the European Parliament, really, not that much with BEREC, but with the European Parliament, but we just don't see BEREC helping us, just the reverse. But the debate we have on the, especially on the e-privacy, is that we want the rules to be the same for the OTT providers and for telecoms. Because if you regulate, because first of all, we believe telecoms are the only European-based companies with European-based workforce that are able actually have a tiny little chance to compete about these giants. It's a small chance, by the way. It's not a big chance. But they have a chance. Nobody else has a chance. So if you regulate your local companies more than the foreign companies, you're going to get zero. All your smart people are going to go outside Europe. By the way, I don't know if it's true, but an interesting article I read was on AI specialists, which claimed that, first of all, if you're really good in AI, your starting salary starts at €500,000 a year, which is incidentally probably more than what any of us has as a base salary in the room. The other interesting article is that why is this? Because there are probably no more than 10,000 people in the world that actually understand what we're talking about. So question is, we are, and if you spread this over a 8 billion population, so you either are going to, policy-wise, find these 1,000, 2,000 people, you're going to stick them here, work for European companies and get the value here, or they're going to run away because you cannot stop them. You cannot stop them. So the issues that we have on the code is we want to be able to invest in infrastructure, and we want to make sure that it's not an asymmetrical game. If you lose money, your shareholders lose. If you make money, your regulator will say marginal cost, so you don't make money. Because in that case, nobody will invest. So if somebody tells you, go and build something, if you're successful, it's for free for everybody. If you're not successful, you lost your time, money, so who cares? So this is actually the debate about the code. And the debate about e-privacy is this single rules for everybody. Do not regulate your homegrown companies, which incidentally are only the telecoms, because no OTT actually worth its scale is based in Europe. Think about it, and you will find that this is the truth. Maybe for a reason, but so you either give your local companies local European companies a fighting chance, or we're going to be stuck with the monopolies of the world. So,
very
Boris.
interesting hypothesis that you have, Atanas. I had the chance for the ETNO study also to interview the consumer CEO of AT&T, John Donovan. He's the big simplifier. He actually said telecoms of the future are 5G plus SDN plus artificial intelligence powered into the network, and then differentiated services sold on top of that to consumers and to businesses. And when I asked him how to transfer that to Europe, he said, stop meeting, start competing. So that is actually how do we get Europe to compete? I would have this question probably also to you. So perhaps you have questions either to some of the panelists, or you have a point of view that you want to share with us. Is there anybody that wants to share some point of view? Can we have the mic on here? Okay.
Just first wanted to say thanks a lot to you guys. It was very insightful, very interesting panel. I guess my question isn't directly directed to the competition in Europe, but in a sense partly. So we discussed a lot about 5G, and my question would go maybe into the direction like to go a step back to 4G. And what my question would be, because I think we have the perfect panel with you, Mr. Maurer, with you, Mr. Dobrev, and ETNO also. So I come from Germany. The mobile network in Germany is, compared to Bulgaria, like a developing country, I would say. So Bulgaria is way better, way faster, more stable internet, mobile network. If you go by train in Germany to the countryside, you will lose connection on the phone. You will lose internet connection on the mobile. So I guess my question is, the first one is, what happened in Germany? I think it's twofold. The first question: what happened in Germany in the past? What went wrong? Maybe that's directed to you. What did Bulgaria do to catch up so fast? And what would be the pitch to Germany as a nation? What they can do in the future?
I would love, Atanas, if you want to take that up again. I don't want to talk about what people didn't do well, but perhaps you can talk about what you did well.
We're going back to the basic things. Most of the German operators actually had for years targets from the investor base of around 10% sales to capex. The average in Bulgaria, depending on the year, on purpose will do average for the year, for the industry is between 18 and 22. Also on top of that, your government was nice enough to take billions out of the industry for licenses, so people were left without money for networks. So that's also a policy choice. Do we tax heavily the industry, bleed them dry? And let's say, for example, one of the debates we have with our regulator is, let's say, 2.6 licenses. They are 3 years in a row trying to auction it. Interest, zero. Why? Because we're saying it's not affordable. You cannot ask us to have affordable services, and you take, and your 2.6 licenses is priced as your 900 licenses. We just cannot make money out of it, and it's not us that think of it. The whole industry thinks the same. However, the regulator is, apart from everything, is saying we have political pressure. So if we cut the price on something, we don't want to be seen pro-industry. So that's actually part of the debate. If we want to push forward the industry, you need actually to enable industry to invest, make affordable the basic things, because licensing and frequencies are the basic things. Because let's say, if you take a Hong Kong or something like that, they have a lot of population in a very small space, so they're frequency constrained. A country like Bulgaria, and even by Germany, by the way, because actually the German cities is not that concentrated. So it's not license constraint. You just need to free it from the military, which is also a debate we have here local with the policy, but we are on bigger things today. But so you need to give industry affordable licenses, long-term licenses, they will invest and we will compete the hell out of each other. Because one of the things that happened is that there was an operator in Bulgaria that has a tiny mobile share. So it needed to expand because its other businesses were dying. So in order to expand, it needed to provide better services, among from other things. So it invested. It took the cash out of its dying business, invested in mobile. And the others had to follow. So we need to create either to have a specific circumstances, but from a policy debate, you can hope for a miracle, because by the same token, that same operator could have decided, okay, let's bleed the cash dry and go home. But, so from policy perspective, you need to enable the basic perspective so that you invest. And then, by the way, at least by year end, we will have LTE at 96% population and 86% territorial. Check what is the territorial coverage of LTE in Europe average, so that we don't turn into advertising.
I do see that,
and by the way, Bulgaria, incidentally, is 6th country in the world by 4G speeds.
So I see that Marta is very nervous on chipping in.
With, by the way, constrained licenses.
To chip in the European perspective on that, and I already saw additional people showing up. Yeah.
I just want to make a very short comment on affordability. And
Yeah.
I think actually your question shows that consumers don't care only about affordability. They care about speed, they start to care about latency. Also, because when we sometimes talk about consumers, but it's not only consumers, it's all the businesses that you talked about actually need our networks, it's the whole economy. Affordability is no longer the criteria. And actually, by the way, if you compare Europe to other regions of the world, our prices are not expensive. We had this consumer survey I just mentioned before. 60% of the people inquired actually think the prices are not expensive, and 50% out of the 60% actually think they're cheap. But I agree with you. We don't want to increase the price. We need to keep prices low. This is an achievement of the legal framework. We need to keep that focus. We don't want the prices to increase because we want the services to be affordable and therefore accessible by people. But there are other factors for that. And on that, I actually relate to your point on competition. For us, competition is very important. As I told you, we are no longer only the incumbent, so we really have to give a very important role to competition. But it's the competition to invest. It's the competition to roll out networks and to differentiate on networks. Otherwise, you create this wait-and-see situation where the incumbent doesn't roll out because it's not profitable and they're going to have a regulated offer anyway. And then the access seeker says, well, if I can have a cheap regulated offer, why would I bother to invest on the network? This on the fixed side. And then on the mobile, I think Atanas already explained very well all the spectrum issues, so I would not step into that, but maybe Adriana.
We are very close to a lively debate. But I give it to Kyriakos first and then let you react because he has his hand off all the time.
Maybe to be a bit provocative, because we're talking about platform plays and the role that the telcos could be taking in this space, while at the same time, as Mr. Dobrev said, having the reality that almost all platform plays to date have come mostly from the US. Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, I can go on forever.
Okay, right? You can put Alibaba inside.
I think if I look at what was probably a European-wide platform play, was the birth of GSM, and that was very liberating at the time when it happened. It liberated the powers of the economy. Is there something about the digital economy that we're not getting in Europe? And I'd like the perspective of the panel.
Whom? Yeah, you want to react to that, but we need to. You have one thing that you want to.
One note related to our services. I'm quite happy that we have very good services, mobile services and fixed services as well, at affordable prices. And I think that this is due to the fact that we're really working for our sector. I mean, we're working like a regulator and policymaker, not to bring money in advance for auction or tenders, but mostly to release frequency and provide initial prices, taxes, not for tenders or auctions. And I don't remember when was the last auction for frequency. It's many years ago. If you have frequency, we try to give to the operators to have enough capacity and to provide good services and at affordable prices.
So that is a good commitment that we get all the frequency that we need. Now, I hear the GSM moment. Often I haven't heard that in a time. I hear a lot about we need to have the Android moment in the next wave where everything gets connected. So what is actually, how do we get to this thing that we get something like the GSM again, which was a European success?
I think that was a good question, what we're missing in Europe, and I think Jožek
what we're missing in Europe, and you want
given
to
that he has the perspective, it's better for him to try to answer that.
Yeah, the GSM moment was actually fantastic and fundamentally enabled Europe to be, for a decade, fairly advanced compared to, crappy GSM, sorry, not GSM, mobile offering in the United States, right?
CDMA.
Now,
CDMA.
yeah. Now, the perspective about platforms, Facebook, Google, we can't really, this is something that's going to be very difficult to get undone. But what we need in the future, and if you look at it, all the McKinseys and actually even Cisco, we did this study of the promise of digital economies. Trillions of dollars, right? But the message is, if we are not able to create the platforms or basically enablement platforms for digitalization of the industries and the societies, we ain't going to get anything of this trillions of dollars, right? So one of the things that you can see, it's a European problem, is fundamentally we are fragmented, right? Even I work a lot in Mexico. This is a country with 135 million, and when they have the mass. Here we have Bulgaria, right? I'm Slovenian originally. It's 2 million people, and we have our telcos and cable operators, and each is developing something else. So one thing, I'm not saying that this needs to be regulated, but we've seen the industries before coming together and working on a common platform, how to do things. At the end of the day, GSM was not regulated, right? It was not, the guys in Brussels who were not saying, oh, we'll develop a single mobile standard. Actually, industry did, because the mobility across European borders was important. So what I would say, it's not just telcos, but also the other elements of the IT industry fundamentally need to get together and understand how do we create a common European platform. And this should be private initiative. This has nothing to do with regulation, right? But fundamentally, how do we create platforms, and then how can regulators help us just put together a little bit of rules that this platform can operate and everybody plays by the same rule. But I think the industry society, the industry society, Scott. I can't find the right word, but you know what I mean. Like FD, like others, should come together and bring people and say, okay, how do we do it for the benefit of Europe? And it's actually business benefit. And by the way, if we don't get investments in the right way in telco, we ain't going to get, the platforms won't matter either, right? Because you will simply not have the capability to connect. So industry activities, I would really advocate the work that you guys are doing should move things forward.
Any other perspectives from the panelists or from the yeah?
I want to challenge panelists to comment this topic. Many of us, and you also use the word platforms. And we agree that the most profitable platforms were created not in Europe. But am I right to think that all these platforms are only tools in hands of the big companies to realize their business innovation and business models? And I saw many discussion around the technologies, around the regulation, but I missed to hear how the business models in telecom industry will be changed. I mean, European telecom industry will be changed to ensure at least chance to compete with the US giants. Because what's happened is that they started to be only service provider, but heavily investing in infrastructure right now. If you'll take the picture of all across the world about the fiber optic and the speed of networks, you'll see that they belong to them, not to any European telecoms. So the challenge from my point of view must be focused on the business models. What kind of business models could ensure that European telecoms will find a place on the world market? And I miss to hear. Thank you.
So let's try to tackle at least some of the questions you raised. The other is it bad that the companies are working for money? It's not bad. Because that's the best motive we have found so far. So if you say, yes, are the companies simply tools to make money from their owners? Yes, they are. So, and I think as a society, we, for example, have a bit bigger problem of accepting that, given our legacy. But most of the successful innovations came actually from countries that they don't have such a problem. And you can say that actually every time you freed people to work for themselves and be entrepreneurial, innovation came around. So in Europe in the Middle Ages, when everybody was locked and everybody was, you can say, regulated, there was no innovation. The Industrial Revolution started when people started to innovate and were no longer serfs but started to work for themselves. So are the companies simply tools? Yes, they are. It is good. Second, world speed records belonging to Google is actually not true. It belongs to the vendors that are doing in the lab. The fact that Google is doing Chukwutuka, whatever it was, a small town in 10,000 people in Tennessee, and for this town they have a high average speed, doesn't really matter. Because for the scale of US, one town with 10,000 is like nothing. So we can do actually high-speed internet here, and we'll do more for Bulgaria than they have done for US. So that measurement is not true, because that you can say AT&T do the lab test with whomever, NEC did. So that's why I do not agree with that statement. Which leaves us with the other question. What to do, correct? And can we compete, and what will telecoms just invest in infrastructure? That's a very nice question from two perspectives. First of all, if we don't invest in infrastructure, nobody else will. And if there isn't infrastructure, all the other OTT services are going to be not working. So, like the point of electricity, you cut electricity, a couple of hours later, or a day or two later, but sooner or later, communication dies. And we go back to Middle Ages. So, same one is with investment. So I think for the foreseeable future, I personally, but I think a lot of the industry, and maybe Marta will confirm my point of view, but one of our basic roles will be to build, operate, and maintain the basic infrastructure. We have the fortune or misfortune, depending whether you ask the consumers or whether you ask the investors, is that the investment cycles are very quick. Okay, and we need to pour more and more and more money. Because, by the way, industry that invest, whether it's the 15% or the 20% of their revenues in CapEx every year for a decade, there is no other industry like that. There is no single industry like that. So one of our basic roles will be this. We're not shying away from it. It's our bread and butter, which, by the way, also means that communication will not be for free. Maybe that's the bad news of the panel. But if communication is for free, it can be for a time, then nobody will invest, and it will disappear. So like any, even if it's a public good, I mean, let's say healthcare is almost for free in Bulgaria, but that is not always for free because we pay it in taxes and everything, so nothing is for free. Somebody needs to pay for it. So will communication cost become zero? It will not. Can some of it be bundled in other services? Yes, it can. You're buying an Amazon Kindle and you get the book downloaded for free. It's actually not for free because you're paying for the book. And actually the cost for Amazon for the download is a fraction of the cost it is for them to actually print it on paper. So it's not for free. And by the way, they tend to pay for the telecom providers for that service. So I think, unfortunately, communication will not be for free. Of course, you buy a car, you pay 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever model of the car, you get bundled with it e-call or other services or GPS services for a time. It's not for free, actually. The car manufacturer will pay to the network. Otherwise, they will not get it. But are we going to expand in other areas and compete with the big platforms? Question is, we want to. And that's the debate around we want equal rules. Because yes, we want to. We want to provide you all the other services. We're thinking how to provide the other services. We're dreaming, investing, trying, failing, succeeding in providing those services, but we also want, and we think it's very important next year, because it will determine whether we are going to invest in that or we're going to forget it and just focus on increasing the prices and fighting with the regulators about it. Which, by the way, the utility companies are damn good at it. They have proven time and time that they can prove to the regulator that they can increase prices.
So we are running out of time. It has been a lively debate. Probably we have 1 minute or 2 minutes left. I was told that I should speed up. So probably what we have is we have a minute for every one of the panelists, while when in 2 or 3 minutes the people leave the room, what is the thought that they should take home from this discussion, which was about smart telecoms, a platform for the future, for the digital future in Europe. Marta, we go the other way around. We start with you and go the other way around.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, that's a very good idea so that I can actually be the boring one and let the others end in a positive tone.
Oh, no, the ladies first.
No, I will. No, I promise I will be boring, but I have to. Because the last discussions at the ETNO community actually show a big frustration. We are actually very happy to see digital is now in the speech of the heads of state. We have digital summits, we have extraordinary councils of ministers of telecom, very ambitious goals on the gigabit society, on the competitiveness of the EU. But at the working level, both at the council, both at the parliament, being it the code, being it the privacy directive, we just see really that these ambitions are not materializing. And we would really call on legislators and regulators for the part they actually play in advising legislators to actually refocus on the big policy objectives to give this industry a chance to lead.
Thank you. Jožek?
Right, well, there are basically two takeaways, right? I think one is call to action. It would be really along what can we do to harmonize certain things to start. Despite having national telecoms, how can we start functioning more like a Europe in other areas, not just in the area of mobile networks? The other thing is more the call to action that I usually give to the telecoms. It's basically, I'm not really sure that telecoms can afford another OTT moment with IoT and some new things that are coming, because if they lose this OTT opportunity, it probably really is going to be pipes and that's it. And nothing more. Intelligent, smart pipes, because yes, you need it. You need, as I said, the pricing will probably move from bandwidth to latency in the future or whatever, because of the application quality. But evolving the business models and providing services that move beyond basic connectivity is something that telecoms should really look at and focus to be successful and have money to invest in better infrastructure.
Atanas, you want to close us off?
And because the tendency is everybody to give an advice to the others what to do, I will then maybe follow it. But I think for most of the people in the room, the debate we're having, I think the important one is gigabit society will come. What can be connected will be connected. What can be, and what is more important, what can be automated will be automated. So I think when you come and think about your business, you really need to think is that this wave is coming, whether you like it or not. So think what is your going to be role, and think how you're going to be successful only if you embrace it. If you embrace the super connectivity, you embrace the automation, you embrace the AI and transform your businesses. Maybe we can help you, maybe we cannot. But unless you do it, you're not going to be successful in 10, 20, or 30 years. So this is, if you remember, if you don't remember anything else, then I think from me, this is it.
So, hope you loved this debate and that the discussion goes on when you're out of the room, and thank you for your attention.
Most of the people don't care about our problems in a way.